Hello, welcome to the Really Coding channel. My name is Jay. This is going to be take two. I initialized a project earlier. I wasn't recording. It's a Cookiecutter Django project. This is going to be a walkthrough, basically, of what I know about the Django templating system. I mean, kind of in regards to Cookiecutter Django, the template, the way that it comes default. But at a certain point, we're just talking about Django templates here, which I'm trying to think if there's anything in the project initiation that I need to remind you of. I do not want to go back and redo the project. Sorry, that was about an hour of recording. So I think it's better if we start here. But just so you know, I did go ahead and I ran Cookiecutter on the Cookiecutter Django template. I initialized a new project. I'm not using Webpack. I'm using async. I think I installed Celery for some reason. Melpit. We were looking through the base template, which is where I kind of want to go back to. So we'll go ahead and start that back over. So just so you know, project just initialized. Let me set the scene here. The project was just initialized. I just spun up the Docker container. The only thing that I did was I was talking about blocks and whatnot, so we can go back into that. Let's look first at the config file. So in your initialized project, under config, under urls.py, I covered this in another video for another reason, but we're back to these default paths of this is your root path. This is your about path. I actually do have it fired up so we can see that. So this is the root path, and mine's going to look a little different than default, and I'll show you why in just a minute. This is the about path, and it will look the same. Oh, it has a green hello in there. Okay, I'll show you why in just a minute. I set up a thing. Okay, so these paths both, they don't take a view that is like available anywhere other than under Django generic views. It's no different. This is where you get the create view, the detail view, the list view under views.generic under Django. This URL path just delivers that template view as view, and then it passes the home template, same as this about page as well. It gets the about template, and those live inside of your projects folder or your apps folder. Under templates, under pages, see pages, about, then you have about and home. And if you look at them, they both just extend. Well, I'll show you why this one's a little different in just a minute. I'm trying to get caught up with myself here. They both just extend base.html. Base.html being right here. I actually do think I need to hit back a lot here. Let's get. Okay, we're good. Okay, so base.html. So the way this works, if I go back into home, if I go back into the URLs here. When the homepage route is called, it basically activates. It calls a template view a class-based template view. A class-based view that is a generic view meant to deliver a template from Django.views.generic. It's one of the most. I'd bet you all of the other class-based views extend this view because its functionality is essentially just delivering a template. All right, so the template that it delivers is the home page, or home.html. So if we go look at that, it's going to go grab this code from home, which is just by default the extend.base.html. Okay, so it's going to extend the base.html. So if we go look at base.html, what do we get? First, we're loading static, and we're loading I18N, which is for translations. Static gives a direct path to the static folder from settings. So you can, anytime you call the static tag, you can call a file from within this file structure right here. So the path would be css dash whatever's in here, project.css, whatever. Okay, then it does this get current language as language code, puts language code in the lang.html. If we look in here, I did move some of these around a little bit. I like to go through and kind of fix the formatting, space things out, group things the way that I like them. Let's close this URL path. That's just typical when you're setting up your own pages, kind of crawl the HTML. One thing that I did do is just as an example is to show that like these are blocks. You'll find blocks all throughout the base template. You can find blocks in the child templates as well. Blocks allow you to overwrite content areas from other templates, and I'll show you that in just a second. One thing is you can make your own blocks. I think that was a little confusing for me at first, but you can go into a template and you can call a block a widget, you can call it a gadget, a widget, or whatever. You can just call it whatever you want, but you have to have an open block and an end block, and then you always kind of want to put the name at the end. It's not required, but linters will throw a fit, and it's just good practice. You can put anything in a block that you can put in HTML. The whole point of having a block on a base HTML page is to be able to plug content into it from other HTML pages to overwrite areas. However, it's good practice in a lot of cases to put default content in a block. Anything inside the block will be overwritten. There is a super block tag we can look at that pulls the super in from the block, but I don't think you can overwrite or extend the block after that. We might have to play with that and see. But you can put anything in a block that goes in the area where the block is. So like we're in the header here, so what would we put in a widget? Probably nothing, so we can remove it. However, we do have a block right here that is for the title of the website. So by default it says website here. It doesn't. I don't remember what it said by default. I changed that. My example being that on every page now, unless you overwrite this title block, the title block will print website, which would be like the website name. You can put like name here, right? Business name, whatever. Now, if you pass a page title through the context, so if there's a page title, it'll print the page title, put a space, a pipe, and a space. So you have the page title, home, about, space, pipe, space, business name. All right, so that this way, and then if you don't want this website part here, you could overwrite it. You don't even have to have this block here if you don't want it. We don't have to have this. We can just delete it. There. Now, website name is hard coded by default, and then if there's a context or a page title in the context, then it will print it there. We can change page title, even though I don't think that's good convention for the title in Django. I don't think it matters too much, but there might be like maybe auth. There might be some packages that are expecting the even then that shouldn't be a capital P. Not that even exists right now, but it should be a lowercase p. But they're like auth might expect a page title block. So deleting this might be a bad move on that part. As opposed to, I don't think it passes a page title context, so you probably wouldn't get the sign in from the default auth views. So there's some things to consider, but blocks are very changeable. You can do a lot with them. You can nest them. Cookiecutter Django, the template comes with some meta tags. Not all of the ones that you might want to use for SEO and whatever, but decent. I like to run a favicon generator that gives you like 30 tags of favicons for different devices and whatnot, and manifest and all that stuff. So typically there's a lot more of these links on a full-blown project for my uses. One thing that I find a little odd about the default setup here is that for some reason they put the project CSS and the bootstrap CSS inside of this overwritable block CSS tag. So one use case that I could see for needing an overwritable CSS tag is what I was doing earlier, which I can actually show you. So I put an H1 down here in this content block, which we're going to get down to, but I took it out. So let's put an H1 in here and say, hey, okay. if we go look at the page now, we'll see H1 hey. It says hello, but that's not even... Okay, so it says hey, it's in black, right? So let's say I want to make it red on the home page. For whatever reason, I want the H1 to be red on the home page. So you can overwrite that CSS block. And keep in mind, you can call it anything. It's just there because it's there. It's something that the Django or the Cookiecutter Django developers put in as a block to be overwritten. But we could remove it. We could change it to overwritable underscore CSS, whatever. Okay. I don't want you to get hung up on what blocks are what. But this block is available in the base template, and we are about to overwrite it. And the color I'm going to use. Oh, we have to use style text. Probably lowercase though. H1 color red. Okay. So whenever we come back and reload this page now, we got our red color, but we lost everything else. I can't think of a single situation where you'd want to lose your framework CSS or your project CSS, except for maybe a landing page, but you're still going to want to use your framework structuring to build out that landing page. There's no point in overwriting it. So I don't know exactly why it's set up this way. I don't want to pretend like I know right and this is wrong, but this is a little weird. So one of the first things I always do is I take this out of the CSS block. I place it here. I get rid of these comments because honestly, comments that tell me a style sheet's are annoying to me personally, but that's why I'm not a great developer. Don't be like me. Enjoy your comments. We can now shrink this down. One thing though, so now that that's saved, let's go look at it. There's nothing in the CSS block. Everything was moved out. It's now part of the global page. Now we have our bootstrap stuff back, and we have our project stuff back, even though it's all just right now just like 4 alert styles. And our hey is red, but if we go to about because in the about page we're not overriding this block CSS with this red styling, or here for that matter, but we can. So we can say green. Now keep in mind this is in the default template, or in the base.html template. Now it's green because we're on the about page. But if we go back to home, it's still red because we're overriding this. So now this is the default. So anytime this base.html is called, it will load this into the head, or wherever it's placed, which is in the head in this case. Unless it's overwritten. So even if we took this out and we just had the block in here with nothing, it's still overriding it by removing the default. So now hey is black again. So that is another thing that you can do. If it's not so much about replacing content, sometimes it's just about turning content off. You know, that's a good it's a good method to have your head wrapped around, to be able to cancel things out sometimes. But if we go back to the about page, it's going to be green because of the default right here. And then if I go to the about page, I place this block here. Let's change it to yellow. Oh, with a W. Hit refresh. Because we're on the about page, it's yellow. Go to the home page, it's black because it's being overwritten on the home page. It's being overwritten on the about page. So even though it's set to green here, it doesn't matter. It's not on these pages. Now, there's other pages calling this theme. So if we go back to URL, the config.urls, if we go look at counts login, which should have an H1 on it. Which we could have just clicked on the link. Yep, okay. So our sign in is green because That's an all auth template, by the way, so it's a little more complicated to actually edit that. But the base homepage here is making it green because it's being called, because it is the base for the website. You can have multiple versions of a base homepage. You can have, for instance, the base.html page would be called by all templates, but then you get into a dashboard area where you have several different types of the same dashboard. So your dashboard template extends your base template, but then all of your little dashboard component pages extend your dashboard page. And that's what nesting's about. So moving down the page, if you look, we have this le JavaScript. I think it's French. But basically place at the top of your document so pages load faster with defer. I don't really know if this is better. For one, let's I don't know how much better it is to have defer at the top of your page as opposed to having the script tags at the bottom of your page. I'll be honest, I think about that. It keeps me up at night. But just like with the CSS tag up here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to overwrite your default stuff in most cases. All right, because if it's going to be in your project folder or your project.js file, it's probably going to be stuff for like your header or your footer or global items that will be on the page often. And the code's going to probably be written a way to check to make sure something exists before it tries to fire off and throw an error. Whereas if it's on like a specific page, you're kind of assuming elements are going to be there. Maybe it's written a little more specifically, and you know, so like you might have like a page specific script that you put right here in deferred, I guess. But either way, yeah, I just kind of move those out to where they're on every page. There's also an inline JavaScript at the bottom of the page, which we'll get to. So, but that's the head. You're missing things like Open Graph and Twitter share tags, keyword meta tag. You could blow out the favicons a little bit. I don't really know how I feel about the JavaScript being in the head, but beyond that, like that's really like that's pretty standard. Oh, and JSON LD is another thing that's you kind of want to go generate somewhere. Okay. So on the body tag, there's this body class block, and I don't often use it. I can see some benefit to it. Even using HTMX, actually, there's some areas where you can throw something on the body tag to make transactions smoother. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of other examples of where you might want to put a class on the body tag for various reasons. You can also do something like, you know, just again as an example of extendability. Say block body ID. Oh, and block body. I did it again. Body ID. And I don't know, just put like a page body as the default. You can even go so far as to, you know what, let's say I want to do like page body dash, and then every page is going to get a code if it needs it. So this ID is going to be body, probably say base here, right? Page body base is the ID for this body. Now I don't know why you'd have multiple bodies in a page where you need, you know, but it's just an example is in terms of the blocks you can use. So inside the body, you get this block body. This is where your nav bar is. I for one, I do upgrade. So this is you're gonna, if you download Cookiecutter Django, or if you initialize a project with the way it's set up right now, you're getting 5.2.3 Bootstrap. So one of the first things that I do is I upgrade that to 5.3, both the JavaScript and the CSS here. I go grab the 5.3 version. And then because the templates are so simple right now, it's really not hard to translate that over. to where you can use. So you just go grab the 5.3 nav bar and you paste it in here and just kind of copy your stuff up to the new code. The ULs, this is going to be the same, so you can just copy the whole UL and replace the one in the example. The example is going to have a nice form in it. It's going to have, I think it has, no, it doesn't have the color mode switcher by default, but the 5.3 has a color mode function on it, which is really nice. So I highly recommend, it's been out since May 2023. I highly recommend using 5.3 over 5.23. I'm not sure why 5.23 comes in the standard in this project, but maybe there's a good reason, or they just haven't updated it yet. I would suggest go ahead and updating that. But that would be the nav bar right here. So you could probably, this has a margin bottom of 1, by the way. This is a wrapper for the whole body. No, just for the header up here. But this is your navigation. See if we can get to it a little better. So just standard Bootstrap nav bar. You have this. This is for mobile, I believe. Your toggle, your nav bar. What do they call that? Hamburger button. Nav bar toggle icon, toggler icon. This is the home page, project 1. If we go look. Project 1 is over here. This is the thing I'm talking about. It disappears. Okay, but so you would probably put a logo here or an SVG. This doesn't get URL doesn't get imported. It's kind of available in your template by default for some reason. Probably one of the template processors. Anyways. Whenever you're using, when you're in these templates, if you don't know, this is Django templates, which is pretty similar to Java. There's a templating language I'm really familiar with called Hubble with the HubSpot platform. That they're all very relative to each other. Some things, the filters and the functions are the two things that are, wonky between languages, I think. But the syntax is pretty similar. Double mustaches give you variables, whereas you generally are running some kind of function when you're using the mustache %sign encapsulation. So when it comes to URLs, anytime you need to call a URL, the URL has to be available somewhere. In this case, home is available in your URLs file. It's called home right here. And the URL function knows to go to your routes and find it. So if you have an app, so for instance right here, this app namespace is called users. If I want to target something in there, it'd be users : and then whatever's in the user URLs files, which we can maybe get to. I don't know. This might be running a little long already. But this puts the URL to the relative path to the view in the project, or in the template here. So you'll see that throughout. This is what's wrapped around the branding icon, the text right here, which could be an image or an SVG. This is the actual navigation. This is the home link, the about link. You get down here, it gets a little more complicated. We look at how Cookiecutter Django already has all auth set up and has the links to the different mechanics for that in the navigation already. So one of the first things it does is it checks if request.user is authenticated. Request and user are always going to be available in your template. You can get username, avatar from them. I would build functions on the user model that provide those, or a graceful default if those things don't exist, like an avatar. But however you do it, you do have access to request and user. User is authenticated. This determines if it's an anonymous user. So if it's an anonymous user, it's just a general user, somebody just popped up on your site. They don't have an account, or they're not logged into their account. You don't want them to see certain things. You also want to have them see certain things that a logged in user would need to see. So this kind of logic is pretty important for templates in a lot of ways. This is not how you log in gate your routes by any means, but when you're on, you can have a route that has public and private information on it and gate it with this type of logic. Just remembering that is authenticated on the user will let the template know whether or not the user is authenticated. This is what I'm talking about though. This is to the user's app, which has an app name set in URLs. the detail route, which will get us to, and I don't have a super user set on there to show you, but this is if they are signed in, and then it has the logout button, the sign out. If account allowed registration, which is a setting you can, I have an app up right now I need to finish, and I have registration turned off because I don't want anybody to use it. Then it will show if they're not logged in, and also account allowed registration is set to true in your settings, then it will show the sign up link. But whether or not the account allowed registration, it'll always show the login link if there's not an authenticated user. So in this situation, there might be like, you might not want to show the marketing pages to the user if they're signed in. You can tuck these away in the else logic. It's whatever you want to do from there. It's really like that amount of logic is really good for being able to have a robust application. All right, so moving into the main area here. This is the messaging system. So you get messages from Django.contrib. So from Django.contrib import messages, and then you would say messages, the type of message, error, success. I don't know if there's a warning. Then you pass the request and you pass the message there, and then it passes that up to the user view. Now it gets a little more complicated when you're using things like WebSockets and stuff, right? You have to have JavaScript to put it on the page and take it off the page. But in terms of page loading, that's why when you log in on the default, you will see like and you have to exit out of it. That's the base functionality when you're not using any JavaScript to control it. It's just CSS. Even then, there's a way to use CSS animations to make it to kind of like gracefully disappear after a few seconds. You might have to delete the actual element with JavaScript anyways. It's cleaner that way, but you don't have to. But yeah, so this is the messaging alert system. This is where it's like object deleted, object created, signed in, signed out. You can move this around. You can build it into any system. Right now it takes the default Bootstrap alerts with the message tags, and conveniently the message tags line up with Bootstrap's classes, which is pretty standard, I think, for most frameworks. They want to keep in line with it's the least they can do, right? In terms of like keeping in line with the back end, is use classes that are going to make sense on both ends. So this is a closed button that comes with that because there's no built-in way to make it disappear after a few seconds or whatever at the moment. The messaging logic is pretty simple. So if messages, so if there are messages, for messages, print the message box with the appropriate message class, which gives it the coloring that you need. So it's pretty simple. And this is something that if you end up overriding a page, you'll probably want to move this around. You don't underestimate the messaging system. It's actually really simple to use and to send messages on different events. And, it's there. So don't just delete it, and clean it up and get it out of the way, or try to use it, in my opinion. Okay. So moving on to the guts of the page here. We have, this is, I guess, pretty new. I don't really remember when I started seeing this block main block. In the template, maybe it's always been there. I've always focused on this block content block. So in block main, this is, I typically don't overwrite block main, to be honest with you, but you could. So you could technically put your navigation in block main, between block main and block content, and then if you ever don't want your navigation on a page, you just overwrite block main, which would overwrite everything in block main, including block content, if you don't use it. I guess you couldn't use it because it'd be overwritten. But that's nesting, right? So it comes kind of with a pre-nested solution for things. But if you think about it, so block main dashboard sidebar. There you go. So you have your dashboard links on the side right here. Maybe we put it in and aside. UL, LI, A, href link. All right, so this is the dashboard. On this page, on home page, wait, let's see what that did. Save that. Forget that we do have that open. Okay. It's not quite a sidebar because I don't have the bootstrap structure laid out for that. But there's a link there, right? And then over here we have this hey whatever, right? So on the home page, if I want to overwrite block content, h1 new home page, save, hit refresh. Now we have that h1. We still have that sidebar from base because I'm overriding content, which is inside of block main, but block main still loads up to the point where it says, oh, but we have something different for block content, and then it keeps loading, so it gets all of this as well. Now, let's say I overwrite block main instead. Then we lose everything inside of block main. So that's how all that the overriding blocks work. You can literally take any HTML, CSS, JavaScript framework, as long as when the templates are called by Django, that they have the blocks available for, well, really for the logic. And even then, that's pretty loose, because if you have variables, they fail gracefully. They don't even throw an error. And I'm trying to think of a case where they do, because you can get errors from the template filters and tags. But when it comes to like variables that you're just calling, like if you call like, you know, variable X in the template and there's no variable X anywhere, it doesn't come from the context or the, you know, the view or anywhere, the request. If there's no variable X but you try to call it, it'll just ignore it. So it's not as long as the tags that you need are available for the page to look right, I guess, you know, then one thing that I'm trying to look into is using Pug to write HTML, but then have it export out into HTML files that Django will recognize, which means having the template variables and the template logic probably written in Pug and exported to the HTML files where they will be written or read correctly. So you'd think, right? So that's one of the things I'm looking at, because I don't know. It's cool to see, like, it's kind of cool to chain these technologies together. This by itself is actually pretty simple. I'm trying to think of what else here. Okay, but there are a few other things. Like, for instance, you could overwrite like the body. You know, you could overwrite the entire body tag. Where did that start? Way up here, which has the navigation in it. And then you'd clear out the whole page pretty much. But that's the nesting right there, body main content. And you could go a step further. You could say, well, for one, I like to always pass the page title through the context. Page title. But there's no context with these pages right now because there's no view. They're being passed from a generic view, a template view. So that doesn't work. I'd like to get into that, but I think we're running out of time here as far as this goes. So I'm going to maybe do another one later. I don't know. If you're watching this and you have anything you'd like for me to explore in terms of templates, I can do that. Maybe I'll transfer a template to Bootstrap at some point. Okay, so this is a modal. If you don't know what modals are, they're basically Bootstrap. I mean, they're pop-ups, right? But like if Bootstrap has built-in JavaScript and CSS for modals that you can build out. So you just take some modal snippet code, you can paste it in here, and then you just need to trigger it somehow, and You have your pop-up, whether it be cookie based or based on a button click or whatever. Based on scroll, they get a certain way down the page, it pops up and says, hey, subscribe. Which is the most annoying thing, by the way. I'm really not a fan of that, but okay, so moving down here, we have this block inline JavaScript. So the ideal with this, I'm pretty sure, is to just any kind of like quick script you want to put into the page. Like some things don't even warrant like going and making a new JavaScript file for and all that. So, right, so you just kind of throw it in here real quick. It's also a great place to scaffold things out. One thing that'll trip you up is that this is in comments, and if you don't know, this is how you write comments in Django templates. It's kind of like a block tag. You have your curly braces and your percent signs, and then comment, and then end comment. Instead of end block, it's end comment. You don't have to. I think you might be able to name your comments. I don't know. I wouldn't know why you'd want to do that, but I'm thinking this is enough, right? We just use the comment tag and the end comment tag here. So everything inside of here is going to be commented out on the server level. It's not an HTML comment, a JavaScript, CSS. This stuff does not appear because it's commented out. All right. It says here script tags with only code, no src, defer by default. To run with a defer so that you run inline code. I don't know what that means. But basically, like, I think defer is like, you know, what you want to do up there in the head, and then these run deferred by default, I guess. I don't know. I just write some JavaScript here and there. Anyways, so if we remove the comments from around this, we'll get this is windows.add event listener DOM content loaded. I think you can run that on document too. That's what I normally do. Anyways, this is kind of like the page is ready. Now what do you want to do with JavaScript? So you can, you know, start adding event listeners to things or moving things around or whatever inside here. But this is new age JavaScript doing what jQuery used to do, essentially. So if you know anything about that, then you'd want to use this this area to, you know, write your JavaScript or whatever. But again, this is on the block. This is actually a great example of a way to use this. So this might be specifically, well, no, because again, we're in the base template, right? So there's almost no reason why you'd ever want page-specific JavaScript in your base template. It would be definitely anything global, your header, your footer, little things like that, right? But maybe you do have something that you want to carry across to all the pages. There you go. And then this tag is now available to be overwritten without messing up the base in your home page or wherever. And then if I take this script tag, paste it right here, hit save, and then we go to the home page, you'll see that that's in here twice. Right here. This one's from the base template, this one's from the home page, because it's overriding this currently empty base tag. Now, a good example of, you know, this kind of the overwrite in action is, let's say we did like this. We did, oh, I'm in the home.html page, by the way, and I'm inside the block content page. And if I say block widget, end block widget. All right, and then I'm over in, hold on, go back to home. This is widget content. Hit save, refresh. We'll go back to about we're gonna change home, or we're gonna extend home now, and we're not gonna overwrite this, but we are gonna overwrite the block widget, which is inside that content. That content block, end block widget, and then we'll say this is from the about page. So in this scenario, we have a page that is extending the base.html page. Inside that page, that we have a content area that's overriding the base content area. And in that content area, maybe we have a title. Maybe we're using the page title from the context, so we don't need to change that HTML. It's a little superfluous to do that. So we're going to use the main bulk of the structure of the home.html page because it's good for a dashboard or whatever. We just need to change one little area inside of it. But that one little area just so happens to overwrite the piece of content that the home page JavaScript from the inline JavaScript. So we turn that off because we don't need it when we overwrite that section by overriding it. And then let's say that maybe we need some JavaScript for this section that is overriding the other section that we no longer need the JavaScript for. We can actually put that JavaScript in here. So that's where it's that when you think in modularity like that, where you've got like on a dashboard, you have like a graph. And then if they change the page, you have pagination of, a ledger. And if they change the page, you have I don't know, maybe a file manager. So you've got all these different pages on a dashboard. The bulk of the dashboard is not going to look like the entire website. You'll have marketing pages, you'll have all that stuff, right? So you're extending the base to make a dashboard, and in the dashboard, you're changing essentially what is a panel, which instead of widget, panel would be a better option, a better naming convention. But with those panels is going to come different features or functionality that's going to require different scripts, whereas you wouldn't need the scripts from the other ones interfering or loading, getting in the way. So when you think like that, when it comes to Django templates, and you chisel down to that, how long okay, we're at 42. So that's blocks, right? But just think like that in terms of blocks, because it does get a little bit cooler. For instance, let's go check the about page real quick to show that did change. Got ahead of myself. Invalid block tag on 9, in block, expected in block, or let's go find, I'm confused. In block expected, end block expected, in block, or in block inline. Oh, I spelled it wrong. My bad. I even fixed the tag above it, which apparently didn't need to be fixed. Here we go. So this is from the about page. And if we go look at the HTML here, you'll see that there's only, this is coming from the base, but there's not, that second one's missing. That was from the home page. However, we're using the same template as the home page. We just overwrote that section. So there's that. Okay, so real quickly, moving on to partials or snippets. I actually like snippets better, but for some reason I always call them partials. I think it's like just Python or something, Django. You can do this in a lot of ways. It doesn't really matter where you put them, so you can have global partials. So sometimes I'll do this. I'll do a folder for globals. And then in globals, I kind of put like the bigger partials in the global folder, but then they typically end up having their own little snippets. So I would do file. Sorry. Nope. We'll do folder partials inside the global. All right. So then you have this 2 layers of folders. Let's see what we can pull out of base. Probably the navigation, huh? So let's grab the nav. And we can actually just put that in the globals folder. So we'll say new file, nav.html. Paste this in here. There's a couple of things that we're going to need. Or actually, I think just one thing, which is request.user. We're going to take request off of here. It's only used in 2 places. We're just going to say user.isAuthenticated. And the reason why is because when we come back into base, I just removed the entire navigation. All right, so I'm going to use a function called include. And I'm going to point to that folder, which is globals partials nav.html. So we'll say globals partials. No, it's not. It's just nav, no partials, nav.html. And then we'll say with user equals request.user. Okay, so what that's doing is that's invoking, calling the globals \nav.html file, which we just created here. And then it's passing it user, which it needs to find out if it's authenticated. So it's passing the request.user because that's what we told it. So this is, you don't use colons here, or you don't use commas here. When you're passing stuff, so you can say, I don't know, tickets equals ticket. So if you have to have the object or objects available in the template from the context to pass to your snippets, but request.user is available. But you can pass as many things as you want, and you don't use commas there. That's just that'll get you every time. You'll get a warning about it. Okay, but in nav we have the user, so we should have that same logic, and everything else is pretty much hard coded. URLs will still work. So if we come back over here and we hit refresh, we should still have our navigation sitting there. But we don't. Invalid block tag on line 25. Translate expected else. Okay. So we need IN18 or I18 in. Oh. So we'll say load I18 in, and then I don't think we need static in this folder, but let's see this file. Okay, there we go. So that's all it was. It just needed the tag loaded in there. So, so now what we have is our base file has an include, a snippet from a different file. We can go further. We could take all of our head information. I don't typically do this, but let's go to globals. Let's go to globals, and we'll just say head.html. And go back to nav, or nope, go to base. We can take literally the entire head tag if we want. I think we could technically even take the doc type and the HTML, the lang, the HTML tag opener and put it over here and it still work. Kind of like PHP where you can leave things open and close them in another PHP file that you include. We hit save. Do we need static? Let's just load both of those just to be safe. It's static, and we might need I18 in, and I'm just putting it in there. Okay, so then over in base, we can just say include globals head.html, and I don't think we need to pass it anything. Well, we have that page title equals, which we're not actually using right now, but still, as an example, there's a variable in there that gets called. The only way we're going to get the page title, if we ever do use it in the context of the view and start passing it, is if to get into the title is if we pass it at this point. And we might create some kind of page object that we then send through and just change this to page and do it that way. But at the moment, let's just make sure we have our thing and refresh, make sure that it's working. Okay, everything's working, but for some reason that turned purple. Which might be because the okay. No, that actually makes sense. So we did that, but just so you know, right now, this is not being overwritten by the home page like it should be. And the reason why is because whenever this page invokes this page, it kind of passes these blocks over to it, right? I don't currently know how to pass a block to the include statement. So in base.py. So it would be the same concept, like you want to pass the block probably through here somehow. But I can't for the life of me think of how to target it other than, can I call it CSS? So what if I said CSS equals CSS? Yeah. There's got to be a way to do that. So that's pretty much the, we've hit the limit of my understanding of includes, being able to pass variables and whatnot. I never have considered passing blocks or how that would work or if it's even possible. There's got to be 100 workarounds. There always is. Always are. For accomplishing that, still having that overridable section within the include. A lot of it's going to end up just defaulting to like passing the right thing through the context. But anyways, these work. I've never run into an issue where something didn't work when I was doing this, so naturally it wouldn't happen when I'm trying to show off with the block. Never thought about having to pass the blocks. In most cases, this include function is great for piecing out your code. As you can see, we've got the navigation here. I've never done the head, and I probably wouldn't do that anyways. But definitely like this messaging system can be included. You'll find a lot of things. And then if you get into HTMX, that's the best part about it, is that you can actually update these includes by passing them the template back. So whenever you send a request with HTMX to your view in Django, say you want the navigation to be updated, it would have a class ID or ID site nav. You send the request, the response is set up to send this template back, and HTMX knows to take that ID and swap out the element with that ID with the new version of that element. It's that easy. It's that simple. It's really amazing with Django. So I'm definitely going to be working in towards that when I get into Celery and WebSockets and whatnot. But that's about all I got for templates. I guess well, that's not, because template tags. I mean, there's a lot more. But this was long. Hopefully it made some sense or was helpful. I think that there's far better. We could get a lot deeper into template tags and even then wagtail templates. It's a little different. So still a lot to consider, but I think this was a decent baseline for Django templates, and I hope it was helpful. I'll be back around to stumble over another tutorial later. Till then.